Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And if you like the kinds of things we talk about and you want to take them further, check out michaelneill.ai for access to our new digital Michael app, where you can have a conversation with my digital twin and explore the things we talk about here in more detail. What I wanted to share today is a metaphor that came up on a recent training, and I want to be really clear. This is a metaphor, okay? Because I'm going to be talking about being blind, but I'm not talking about really being blind. I'm talking about being blind as a metaphor. Okay, I think I've said my piece. So the quote that sort of sparked this is a quote from somebody called Houston Smith. We're born knowing, then we learn not to know. Think about that for a minute. We're born knowing, then we learn not to know. When I first heard it, it reminded me a lot of one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain, who said that if people learned to walk and talk the way we teach them to read and write, everybody would limp and stutter. And what they both point to is that as human beings, we are innately wise. We have a natural inclination towards functioning well in the world. You could call it instinct or intuition, but we're kind of made to figure things out as we go. That's how kids, especially little kids, figure everything out, is they just pay attention and then try stuff and keep going and do more of what works and do less of what doesn't work. And at some point then, I guess now I know how to do it. But somewhere along the line, we start prioritizing learning from instruction over learning from trial and error. Learning from instruction over learning from instinct. And once we get in that habit, it becomes a self-reinforcing loop. And the problem with trying to learn from instinct, to learn from instruction versus learning from instinct, is it always makes things more complicated. I have a friend who is an officer in the Army, and one of his first platoons, he was supposed to teach them how to march. And he tells this story. And he had a manual. There was a manual on how to march. I guess there's a manual for most things. And he was really, they were struggling with it. Okay, so you lift your left leg 2.5 inches and, with a straight knee, and then you bend your knee. And then, and he said, as he was kind of racking his brains trying to figure out what else he could do to help his guys learn more easily, he looked out the window and he saw somebody marching so perfectly. And then he went, wait, I think that guy's just walking with purpose. And he realized that what made marching seem hard is they were trying to do it right instead of just doing it and getting a feel for it. And then before you know it, they would do it right. So what's the metaphor of blind school? Well, imagine that your parents were blind and they grew up in a community of the blind, and they assumed that you must be blind too because you were born in a blind community to blind people. So they treated you as though you were blind, and they taught you the things that they had learned at blind school about how to navigate the world. And in fact, then they sent you to blind school when you were old enough so that you could learn how to navigate the world. And at no point did it occur to them that you could see. And at no point did it occur to you that you were any different to them, because they seem to function really well by, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who's been blind for a while, but often, especially in areas where they're familiar, they can move around and you wouldn't know they were blind because they just know they've learned the room, they've learned the building, they've learned the street. Well, for a long time, you would learn to do things the way blind people did them, and you could be a very high functioning blind person after having gone to blind school. But here's the thing. At some point, it would probably occur to you, I can see there's something in front of me. Why don't I just step over it? Or I can see where that is. Why do I need to know the number of steps? Or I can totally see where the door is. Why do I have to feel along the wall? But that's how everybody does it. That's how if you don't, it's dangerous not to do it that way. Well, if you were actually blind, it might be. But here's the metaphor. We've all, in the areas where we're not sure what to do, and sometimes for people it's around money, sometimes it's around relationships, sometimes it's around health. Because we don't know what to do, we assume somebody must know. And so we effectively go to blind school and ask them to tell us how to do it. Now, occasionally that might be helpful. But often it just gets in the way of our working it out for ourselves. And the thing about working it out for yourself is once you've worked it out, you're eminently adaptable. Once you've figured out how to make a dish that tastes the way you want it to taste, you can play with it and you can mess with it. And if you have different ingredients, you know what to do. Whereas if you just got the recipe at blind school, all you've got is the one recipe and the one way of doing it. Now, I want to expand the metaphor a little. What if not only do you not need to keep doing the things the way they taught you in blind school, doing money the way they taught you in blind school, doing work the way they taught you, doing your relationship the way you learned in blind school. But what if, metaphorically, nobody is blind? They've just gotten so used to not using their eyes and navigating pretty well without them that effectively they're blind. And what if, in your using your sight, your inner sight, your insight to navigate the world, every now and again, somebody else opened their eyes and they started to see for themselves too. And so while it's wonderful that there are so many sources, and especially now with YouTube instructional videos, and I remember when the kids were little, and they hadn't figured out how to hide their search history, seeing my son's YouTube search history, and it was how to say hi to a girl, how to kiss a girl, and there was something kind of just very sweet about it. But what if you walked into the next situation where you didn't know what to do, and you let yourself not know what to do long enough to begin to know what to do? And I'll just remind you of that quote that we began with. We're born knowing, then we learn not to know. So what would it be like this week if you went back to trusting your knowing, but also your ability to figure things out in real time, through experience, through trial and error, trial and success, instead of thinking you're taking a shortcut by trying to get it right? Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.